I just came back from Istanbul, Turkey, or Turkey, because they actually officially renamed their country in 2022, which is an interesting thing about this place. But regardless, I spent around a week in Istanbul to explore the city, sort of get a feel for it, see if it could be a base for me in the future, something that I might consider as a global entrepreneur living around the world. So if you don't know me, on this channel, I sort of explore different places around the world. I'm of the strong belief that the West is no longer the best place to be if you have a location independent income, much more value to be gotten in many other places around the world. So I'm sort of exploring around the world for the kinds of places where I might want to set up bases and spend more significant time around the world. First of all, talking about the vibe. So Istanbul is one of the biggest cities in the world. I think it's the 13th biggest city in the entire world. Obviously, they have a massively rich history, like all the way since the East Roman Empire had their capital in Constantinople, which is modern day Istanbul, all the way to the Ottomans and like all of the historic turmoil that has happened in the city. And you really feel this in the place. Like it's a very, very historically interesting city. Like you see all of these historic old buildings, you see all these mosques from the Ottoman era and all these like narrow streets where it's the kind of place where you can just sort of walk everywhere, and like wherever you go, it's sort of a different things that you see. And Istanbul is extremely busy. Like it's a very large city in terms of its area, but still in terms of the density of people there, it's actually extremely dense. And especially the traffic as well is very bad. Even during non-peak hours, traffic is basically in gridlock like all of the time. And another thing I don't like about the place is that there are a lot of scams. Like basically what I learned on the very first ride from the airport to our hotel is that you basically don't want to use taxis because every single taxi is going to scam you. Like they're not going to turn the meter on, they're going to charge you double because you come from a certain country or things like this. So that is a big con. Like getting around can be simply quite difficult because I just don't want to use the taxis because I don't want to get into a battle about the price and things like this. But the big thing that is like a big theme about Istanbul and why I wouldn't really recommend it right now is that it's been essentially economically completely destroyed in the past few years because of some terrible policies by the government. They essentially had hyperinflation. So literally like I'm talking 80-100% inflation over the past few years. Before that, for a long time, the Turkish economy was actually growing extremely quickly, and they still have a lot of potential. Like it's a massive population who are reasonably educated, things like this. But unfortunately, some economic mismanagement has essentially destroyed the economy. So the prices in the Turkish lira, so this currency right here, have gone up so much over the past few years, but they have artificially kept the value of this currency higher than it essentially should be in the free market, which means that even when you're coming there as a foreigner, you feel that the country has become so much more expensive lately. Like in restaurants, I was paying close to Dubai prices in Turkey, which is just not very good value. And the weather as well in winter, which is when I went, it is very cold, it is rainy, it's like gloomy, reminds me of like London weather or something like that. So that is another con. Now talking about the cost of living, I guess I sort of already talked about that. Istanbul is not cheap. It is a developing country with sort of developing country infrastructure and things like this, but you almost pay like developed country prices. Like not quite, it is not like as expensive as Paris or like European cities or something like that, but it is starting to get close to it. I remember I was there just a year ago, and at the time also I felt like, okay, it's not the cheapest, but I still felt like, okay, it's pretty affordable. Now I literally did not feel like it was affordable. And obviously when you add to that the scams, and like a restaurant might randomly add something to the bill that you didn't ask for, and the taxis are gonna scam you, they're gonna charge you like double. Like just a taxi from the airport to the hotel, which took like 1 hour, it was supposed to cost like 1,000 lira, so around 100 dirhams or $27-30. The guy ended up charging me 2,500 lira, which is like 250 dirhams, so like whatever, $60-70 or something like that. And obviously it's much worse for the local population. It's really the local population that's really struggling, which again, sort of, you can feel it in the place that the economy is just really bad. People are struggling, which is of course very unfortunate. I really hope the best for the place. I hope they start going up. But again, that's another reason why I wouldn't really consider it, because I like to be in places that are run well, that are going up, that are growing, which is why I love Dubai, I love Singapore. Now, if despite of all of this, if you disagree with me, you would consider Turkey, then what are the options like? Well, basically most first world countries are gonna get 3 months visa free, and they do have a digital nomad visa, but based on what I was reading about it on Reddit, it's basically only 3 months anyway, so I sort of don't understand what's the point there. If anyone watching this has got this visa, I would be curious to find out what were the details, what was the process like is it actually only 3 months like I was reading online. In terms of taxes also, it is not a very tax friendly place, and tax rates go up to around 40%, I believe. Corporate taxes are 20%. Tax residency, you will be a Turkish tax resident if you reside there permanently, or if you stay in Turkey for more than 6 months within a calendar year, so the 6-month rule that a lot of more developing countries have. In terms of investment, like would I invest in property here, things like this, what's actually interesting is that if you buy property worth at least 400,000 US dollars, you can get Turkish citizenship. So they actually have a citizenship by investment program. Now, whether you want a Turkish passport is probably a different question. I don't think many people are getting that one, but just interesting to note that you do have that option if you perhaps have a very terrible passport or something like that. In terms of whether I would invest in real estate in Turkey, unless you want to live there, obviously, I would again be quite cautious simply because of the currency and the inflation. So even if you buy property there and the property in lira terms goes up, on US dollars terms, it could still go down simply because of the decline in the value of the currency. So that is my brief analysis. Briefly, just not for me, at least based on my experience. I would travel there though. It is a very interesting city to visit. If you don't mind that you're sort of paying a lot for everything relative to what you might expect considering the state of the economy, it is an interesting place to visit. It's very historic if you like that European feel. Again, for my personal preferences, not really for me. Let me know what you think. If you want to see my experience in a different country, you can watch this video right here. And with that, I will see you in the next one.